Hey there, welcome to ChrisCast. My name is Chris Abraham. This is ChrisCast Season 2, and it is episode 25. I am outdoors. I am in a park. I do not have either Google at home or Alexa to help me, so I am just going to make this a simple episode. Season 2, Episode 25 of ChrisCast. My name's Chris Abraham, and today's episode is about my perception of the war in Afghanistan. And too long didn't read TLDR. I am very much anti-imperialism, and I'm going to make an argument that all the way down to the whole concept of, but what about the girls, what about the women, what about the babies, is still a type of imperialism, well-hewn, well-honed, well-practiced argument towards saving pagan babies. I will talk about what saving pagan babies means to me, and I will discuss how it has, how it has become saving Muslim ladies. I'll be right back after this break. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It's where I started my podcast. It's where I edited my podcast. It's where I put sound design into my podcast. And it's where I monetize my podcast. And it's from where I share my podcast to every single other podcast platform. It's the place that I decided is the easiest and best place for me to podcast. Thank you. Check it out. Welcome back. This is ChrisCast, Season 2, Episode 25. My name's Chris Abraham. I am at a park, so you're going to hear some little traffic. You're going to hear some cicadas. You're going to hear that kind of other stuff. I thought the cicadas were gone, but please enjoy them. So I wrote 2 articles for Substack, and I want to read them both to you, and I'm going to read as best I can, voice-overly wise. If you want to read them yourself, they are at chrisisa.substack.com. chrisa.substack.com. Chris plus my first initial, Abraham, chrisa.substack.com. Here is, right after the break, is an article I wrote called "The War in Afghanistan Was a Long Con," and I spell that Khan. Be right back. Welcome back. My name's Chris Abraham. This is ChrisCast, Season 2, Episode 25. I'm going to read my Substack article called "The War in Afghanistan Was a Long Con." TLDR. Afghanistan was invaded by the United States, not invited. Afghanis were our hostages, not our allies. The occupation was tolerated, not enjoyed. Any U.S. love was actually Stockholm Syndrome. By Chris Abraham. I called this article "The War in Afghanistan Was a Long Con" because I thought of it and it made me feel pleased with myself and clever. This isn't Afghanistan's first rodeo. They've suffered through long-term occupation by empires so often it's a cliché trope. While occupied cities in Vietnam adapted to French and American occupation by feigning love for Joe, the Vietnamese never really loved Joe, only appeased Joe for reasons of survival during a massively chaotic and terrible war. Note all the friendly villagers who routinely blew up their friend Joe in the streets. South Vietnam invited America to help defend against the North, and more relevantly, the Soviet troops were invited by the official Afghan authorities to help combat the Mujahideen. America wasn't invited to Afghanistan. Sometimes, the city-based leadership intelligentsia of a country can often be at odds with the will of the greater people. Local Hawaiians hate their occupier any more than it pays their rent. Okinawans openly hate their occupiers, though what are you going to do? I know that all of Islam is apoplectic about the mere existence of Riyadh Air Force Base in Saudi Arabia. People never really fall in love with their oppressor, their occupier, their hostage taker. The power dynamic isn't fair. When you are poor and desperate and your occupier offers you a job, you take that job and milk that job for as long as it doesn't get you killed and as long as it lasts. Even someone who is beguiled by Stockholm Syndrome eventually snaps out of it, generally violent and without a lot of compassion or empathy. Even HR knows a subordinate employee cannot give full consent to a relationship with a superior when their job, income, reputation, and life depend on the fickle whims of their boss. And there were never only 80,000 Taliban fighters. There were 380,000 Afghani fighters, 300,000 of which were being trained, funded, paid, and supplied by their American invaders and occupiers until the moment we, the USA, left, which was always inevitable. With that cleared up as best as I can, since I'm not a scholar, an historian, an academic, an intellectual, or even a rigorous writer, let's see what this blogger comes up with. Even I am pretty curious as to what I am about to go on about. The current narrative I am hearing all over the media over the last couple of days conveniently forgets the obvious truth that America has always been an occupying force after having, without consent, invaded Afghanistan as part of some sort of wild goose chase in support of the hunt of bin Laden in the wake of the attacks on the Twin Towers and the Pentagon on September the 11th. The only narrative on the TV, the radio, and in the funny papers is how much suffering the women and the girls of Afghanistan will suffer in the wake of our rapid troop removal and the immediate fall of the Afghan National Army, or whatever they're called, the Afghan Security Service, I think I got this name wrong in this article, to Taliban invaders. Let's get some perspective on the loss of life over the course of the 20 years America has been at war in Afghanistan. Quote, about 241,000 people have been killed in the Afghanistan and Pakistan war zone since 2001. More than 71,000 of those killed have been civilians. Unquote. How many of those around 71,000 civilians do you reckon were women, girls, children, babies, and the elderly? Also, the freedom offered women and girls in modern Afghanistan isn't freely extended to rural or poor women. If you explore women in Afghanistan on Wikipedia, you'll see that not many women in 21st century Afghanistan were independent, modern feminist women. Like all countries, it has a lot to do with the status, wealth, caste, to whom you were born, and if you lived in a city. Honor crimes and rural killings were and are still daily bred all over the country. Afghanistan hasn't been a feminist utopia since the 70s, when it really was a very modern feminist country that was very much a friend to women, and had been since the 1920s. America didn't go to Afghanistan to help women and girls or to bolster some liberal democratic government. America invaded Afghanistan in a knee-jerk response to 9/11 and to hunt down Osama bin Laden, or that was the public narrative. An invaded Afghani people who have suffered invader after invader simply adapts, appeases, profits, trains, grins, bears it, and waits until coffers drain and public support wanes. Then they count the money, inventory assets and spoils, then revert to standard to previous invasion until the next empire forgets historical precedent and gives it another go. First, Afghanistan was invaded by the United States, not invited. Afghanis were our hostage, not our allies. The occupation was tolerated, not enjoyed. Any U.S. love was actually Stockholm Syndrome. Our 20-year mission in Afghanistan was not a United Nations Blue Helmet peacekeeping mission, or part of a State Department-funded USAID non-governmental organization NGO project to liberate and educate oppressed women and girls. This was an assault, this was an attack, this was initiated by the tip of the American spear of war. Invading armies don't invade countries with armies solely to liberate women and girls from the oppression of fundamentalism, no matter how often the radio tells you so. It's a red herring to pluck at your heartstrings. Quote, a red herring is something that misleads or distracts from a relevant or important question, unquote. The relevant and important question is, do the Afghani people consider America to be their allies or simply an occupational force that they just need to endure until they finally leave? It might be the latter, considering how unwilling the 300,000-strong Afghani military force was willing to fight for American-style democracy the nanosecond they weren't paid to. Just because hostage takers and hostages fall in love doesn't mean the love is real or the power dynamic will even allow the sort of consent required for a healthy, sustainable, loving marriage. Quote, Stockholm Syndrome is an emotional response. It happens to some abuse and hostage victims when they have positive feelings toward an abuser or captor, unquote. The Taliban are not an invading force flooding over the border in Iran or Pakistan. The Taliban are the same people who were the heroes of the Afghanistan war. The Soviets fought and lost from December 24, 1979 through February 15, 1989. Remember, Afghanistan only exists because white British policymakers drew it that way. And in fact, Afghanistan is still and has always been a balkanized mosaic patchwork of families, tribes, ethnicities, language, cults, etc. Quote, Afghanistan has never been inhabited by only one ethnic group. Its ethnic mosaic has no precise boundaries, nor is its national culture uniform. Additionally, ethnic groups are not racially homogeneous, unquote. It might be a trope that bears no grounding in reality anymore, but folks used to say that the Mujahideen have 1,000-year memories and 1,000-year grudges. With that assumption in mind, and the fact that back in 1901, Sir Rudyard Kipling bequeathed Afghanistan with the honor of being called the graveyard of empires, having bested the Ottoman Empire, the British Empire, the Soviet Union, and now the United States. One might say that all of Afghanistan's wins were more based on waiting out the enemy and thoroughly emptying both the treasury and the will of the invaders. You might not call that a win, but you'd be wrong. Sun Tzu on Waging War from the Art of War, his book. Quote, when you engage in actual fighting, if victory is long in coming, then men's weapons will grow dull and their ardor will be dampened. If you lay siege to a town, you will exhaust your strength. Again, if the campaign is protracted, the resources of the state will not be equal to the strain. Now, when your weapons are dulled, your ardor dampened, your strength exhausted, and your treasure spent, other chieftains will spring up to take advantage of your extremity. Then no man, however wise, will be able to avert the consequences that must ensue, unquote. Those 300,000 Afghani soldiers weren't our allies. They were just learning how to be better soldiers against imperial invaders for the next time a superpower forgets history and decides again to attempt to tame the graveyard of empires. Last time, got training by both Spetsnaz and the Green Berets. This time, the Navy SEALs. That'll show the next invading army. That's not to say that Pakistan did not take full advantage of the post-Soviet anarchy. Mind you, notice I say Afghanistan and Pakistan and not Afghanistan and Pakistan. Sorry about that. That's not to say that Iran didn't help fund the war against the infidels from the West. Surely they did. Pakistan isn't our friend. Remember, the reason why we invaded Afghanistan, supposedly, was to address Al-Qaeda and to kill OBL in the wake of 9/11. Remember also that we discovered bin Laden secreted and sequestered in Abbottabad, Pakistan, adjacent to the Pakistan Military Academy. But we're discussing Vietnam, not Cambodia. I mean Afghanistan, not Pakistan. Whoops. Back in the 80s, the Mujahideen were revered by the American people. The Green Berets rode horses with them in the mountains and taught them how to fight the Russians. They're the same brave men we supported with Stinger missiles back in the days of Ronald Reagan. Same guys, we call them freedom fighters, though their very name Mujahideen aptly describes their mission and not their lineage or heritage. Quote, in its roots, the Arabic word Mujahideen refers to any person performing jihad. So, unquote. So the Soviets were infidels in the 80s and America were infidels in 2001. We decided to rebrand the honorable and noble anti-communist Mujahideen as the Taliban so that we could smoothly turn the same freedom fighters into terrorist extremists. Don't be fooled though, same guys. Okay, it's not that simple. In the chaos of post-Soviet Afghanistan, the region became much more fundamentalist, and the modern Taliban is quite a lot more influenced by Pakistani religious extremism. It's obvious. The Soviet occupation of Afghanistan drove subsequent radicalization and extremism. It's true. Anyway, there's someone, of course, right by is cutting the grass. So, well, let's soldier through it, shall we? Do you think that maybe the vacuum we are leaving now by retreating will result in more of the same? I could look at it that way. However, I think we have all learned from the American invasion of Iraq in 2003 that destabilization happens because of the evasion and the raising and the bombing and the humiliation of the puppet governing and the disrespecting and honestly the infideling associated with the rape of war by rich Western Christian nations of a poor Muslim one. None dare call it imperial subjugation. That said, what do you call it when the local forces of a country take back their own cities from an invading force? Liberation rights? It looks like Afghanistan is being liberated from an occupying force. That's not what the American news is reporting this morning. Hey, this is Chris Abraham, Chris Cast, Season 2, Episode 25. I am surrounded by little kids who are taking their recess in the park next to me. There's also a dude on a little tractor who's cutting lawns. And I know the most grating thing that's happening is that I'm pronouncing Afghanistan and Pakistan as Afghanistan and Pakistan. But remember, I'm a child of the 80s and 70s, so back then it was Afghanistan and Pakistan, and when I'm doing cold reads from even my own work, I tend to revert. If I were being pretentious, I would have said Afghanistan and Pakistan. However, that is not the case right now. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. All right, thank you for listening to that. I will be reading another one in a second, right after the break, and I will call it, and it is called 1492 or 2021. It's still Civilizing the Savages. Now, before I go into this, my next thing that I'm going to write is about remembering my mom, Barbara Ann Dunn, D-U-N-N. She was a super Catholic girl, and She grew up in Jersey City. She was pride of the Catholic Church. She was so devoted, virgin till she was married, at 33. She lost her virginity the same year Christ, Lord Jesus, died on the cross. Nobody believed that. She was a young, beautiful, sophisticated New York City woman, and that blew people's minds. But she was my mom, and she told me stories about how basically the entire... She was born in 29? Anyway, her entire childhood was done in the pews, and the pews were always talking about saving pagan babies. She was asked for alms to support the saving of pagan babies in Africa, the saving of pagan babies in Latin America, the saving of pagan babies in China, the saving of pagan babies throughout the Soviet Union, and the saving of pagan babies in places like the Philippines in post-war and wartime America. Her entire life was about giving money to the Catholic Church so that they could go out and convert peoples. Now, saving pagan babies is code word for converting primitives, which is to say, putting money towards civilizing Native Americans, Native Hawaiians, First Nations, Aboriginal peoples, anybody who isn't embracing or willing to become infiltrated, converted, or assimilated to a white Western European culture. In the case of pagan babies, it has to do with converting to a Western interpretation of Christianity in the form of Roman Catholicism and or Protestantism, or in terms of evangelicalism, Baptistism, Methodism, even Mormonism, and all the other isms, right? So, but in a modern post-religious world, in an imperialist world, saving pagan babies, just really think about how pissed off all y'all are about how appallingly the Canadians treated the First Nation people by putting them into orphanages and taking them away from their parents and trying to enculturate them to some sort of invader mindset, some sort of Western ethos and some sort of Christianity. Imagine how appalled you are on a daily basis by Native American Indian peoples, and how we went ahead and divided and conquered them, killed them, decimated them, made them look like complete and utter primitives, backward-ass drunkards, and complete idiots. Primitives, and who are better off being either removed from the land or protected and prevented and protected from themselves because they're all alcoholics, or the Aboriginal people of Australia who were abducted and kidnapped from their families, put into regional schools in some attempt to enculturate them as white British colonial members under the Queen, right? So all these things that all y'all are including in your woke agenda, he uses in quotes for effect, in terms of the oppression and subjugation by white men, is the same thing all y'all are getting all like on board with in terms of the most, listen, we invaded Afghanistan. Saying that we invaded Afghanistan to save pagan babies is completely absurd. That's not even the 8th or 12th or 15th thing in our mind. American military soldiers are trained killers. They might be legal trained killers. They are the pride of America. We are proud of our trained military men and women who are trained killers, but their job is not to peacekeep. They're to quote my lieutenant colonel retired friend in the Army, we are trained to kill enemy. Now, if you just swap words, and this is going to be what the topic of my next article that I'm going to read to you is, if you swap words and replace saving pagan babies with saving Muslim women, then, or to make it sound better, saving Muslim ladies, saving pagan babies, saving Muslim ladies, then you'll see that that's completely the same thing. Samesies, right? Catholicism, putting money and energy and funding towards converting, saving pagan babies and saving Muslim ladies, same stuff, same exact, you're falling for it. Now you got to know, you can't be hating on the people who did this stuff. You're as much of a sucker as they were. They were just trying to, all these Native Americans, First World, Aboriginal peoples were just going to go straight to hell unless they heard the word of the Lord and came to Jesus. We were saving them from themselves, just in the same way that we're saving Afghanistan from itself. How dare we? How dare you? How dare you? Anyway, I'll be right back to read you my other rant from Substack, chrisa.substack.com, entitled, drumroll please, 1492 or 2021, it's still Civilizing the Savages by Chris Abraham. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. My name's Chris Abraham. This is Chris Cast. It's Season 2, Episode 25. And I'm going to read you this right after the break. I don't know if all these things have been Hey, I don't know. I think I made mistakes in terms of recording some of these files, so I might have to patch this together later. I don't know if I've recorded every time I've wanted to record. So just as a reminder, if this sounds a little wonky and patchwork and mosaic, pardonnez-moi s'il vous plaît. Anyway, Chris Cast, Season 2, Episode 25. It's all about saving Muslim ladies. I will be right back. (1492) or 2021, it's still Civilizing the Savages by Chris Abraham. It's pretty easy to reframe America's uninvited invasion, occupation, and nation building in Afghanistan. In order to prove just how imperial our having been in Afghanistan for the last 20 years, rebuilding the country in our own image is, please do the following thought experiment. Please release your imagination and walk with me for a bit. Just replace George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden with Herman Cortés, Francisco Pizarro, Christopher Columbus, and Pope Alexander the Sixth. Replace U.S. Armed Forces with conquistadors, and replace Afghanis, the women, girls, boys, elders, with Aztecs, Mayans, Amerindians, Mapuche people, and then replace soul savings, civilizing, modernizing, and enculturating with the same words. Does that make more sense as to why supporting the invasion and occupation of Afghanistan in order to save them from themselves is perfectly analogous to supporting the British colonization of the Americas in order to modernize and civilize the American Indians? A reminder, we were at war with Afghanistan during which at least 240,000 Afghans have died. Many of them civilians over the last 20 years. And how many of those Afghans were women and children? Welcome back. This is Chris Cast Season 2, Episode 25. My name's Chris Abraham. That was poorly read because there's all kinds of noise that distracted me, and I might be out of podcasting juice, but that was called 1492 or 2021. It's still Civilizing the Savages, and if I were to rewrite that again, I would have called it Saving Pagan Babies or Saving Muslim Ladies. But I didn't think about that till later. You can see all of them over at chrisa.substack.com. chrisa.substack.com. If you have any ideas to the domain name that I should use for my Substack, I would love that. I would say you can go look at it at chrisabraham.com, but chrisabraham.com is closed for the next 10 hours because it's being migrated to a new server, and I'm praying to Christ Jesus that it is not effed up during the migration. Anyway, I'll be right back to go ahead and tell you how you can contact me, and thank you for your support and all that other fun stuff. I'll talk to you soon. Mahalo. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. My name's Chris Abraham, and I want you to know that I'm doing this and all of my podcasts on a Sony recorder called the ICD UX570. It's a little voice recorder, and it's got the official lapel recorder microphone. So you tell me if it's doing a good job, or if it's making all kinds of noises, or if it's crappy or whatever. My name's Chris Abraham. I'm at chrisabraham.com. Not today, but as of tomorrow. On social media, I'm at Chris Abraham. That includes at Chris Abraham on Twitter, at Chris Abraham on Instagram, at Chris Abraham on YouTube, which is youtube.com/Chris Abraham. I am Chris Abraham at facebook.com/Chris Abraham. I am Christopher Abraham on my new crack, which is my new crack is TikTok. I'm a 51-year-old man. It caught me with the honey trap, the sexy lady honey trap, but I actually have a complete diverse biosphere of experiencing there. One of these days I might be a content creator there as well, but not right now. Like I said, I'm on Substack at CHRISA.substack.com. You can reach me at chris@abraham.su. You can call me, WhatsApp me, Signal me, and even, I guess, Telegram me at +1 202 352 5051. That's also my text. That's also my voice. But if I don't recognize you, or we haven't scheduled something on Calendly or via Upwork, I ain't gonna pick up unless you're in my contact book already and I recognize you and I like you. What else? On Calendly, CALENDLY.com/Chris Abraham, you can schedule a 15, 30, or an hour-long call. I can, of course, veto that, or maybe just if you want an hour-long call, I can hang up after 10 minutes, but at least it's a start. That's it, except for the fact that I say too much. Thank you for being out here in the nature with me. I hope you enjoyed the sound of little kids playing. I'm glad the guy who was cutting the lawn with his giant micro little tractor stopped. And I hope you subscribe and rate and give me 5 stars and write a review. You can find my podcast. My home podcast URL is anchor.fm/Chris Abraham. I haven't jumped to Chriscast. It was a working title. And I generally try to upload stuff periodically onto YouTube, maybe. Haven't done a lot of it. And you can find me on Spotify and iHeartRadio and Podcast Index and Apple iTunes and Apple Podcast and Google Podcast and iTunes and iHeartRadio and Spotify and Stitcher and all those other places. So you have and I'm addicted to Podcast Addict, and I'm on Podcast Addict and all those other things. Well, it was great to spend this time with you. Love you guys. I'll see you when I see you in the next one, and I hopefully it won't take as long. Talk to you soon. Mahalo. Ciao.